Welcome to this video in which we look at how a school psychologist can support children and pupils diagnosed with spina bifida and hydrocephalus. My name is Katarína Ondášová and I am a psychologist at the Early Intervention Center in Trnava, Slovakia.
My name is Terezia Drdulová. I am a special teacher and I am mother of an adult son with spina bifida and hydrocephalus.
Disability affects a person's life to a large extent, but it does not primarily determine who that person is. In the case of a child, disability does not determine who the child becomes. What influences the development of his personality the most is the quality of relationships. That is, how the adults around the child meet his developmental needs.
Based on research that compared the characteristics of adolescent and young adults with spina bifida and hydrocephalus and their peers without disabilities, adolescents and young people with spina bifida and hydrocephalus have been found to be more dependent on parents, less intrinsically motivated to learn, and less independent in the home environment. That they experience fewer demands from parents and participate less in household chores.
Research has further shown that these young people have fewer opportunities for social interactions with their peers. If they do spend time together, it is often in activities such as watching TV, going to the cinema, or playing video games, which do not provide much opportunity for social interaction. Young people with these diagnoses are often less decisive, and this suggests a generally higher parental involvement in most decisions affecting these young people. It has also been found that adults with spina bifida and hydrocephalus are at significantly higher risk of developing depressive symptoms and anxiety. With the diagnosis of spina bifida, a child is born. Medically, the condition can be largely stabilized and maintained. Several authors point out that the psychosocial development of these children is not directly determined by their diagnosis. To a significant extent, it depends on the attitude of the people around the child. In other words, we professionals and lay people, parents around the child with a disability, have in our hands how this child will perceive themselves, their value, and their competencies in the future. The level of self-esteem of a young person with spina bifida and hydrocephalus has been shown to be more related to the beliefs and attitudes of family members, what family satisfaction and cohesion these young people experience. The children of those parents who are overprotective of their child show lower levels of decisiveness and lower levels of self-esteem in adolescence and early adulthood.
In contrast, parents who have a fervent relationship with their children and at the same time have a reasonably high expectation of them create the conditions for their children to develop coping strategies to deal with challenging situations. The children of such parents also show a higher level of self-esteem and also possess life skills.
The school psychologist has a little impact on influencing the family environment of a pupil with a spina bifida and hydrocephalus. However, their approach can significantly influence the school environment, which after the family environment has the greatest potential to influence a pupil's personal development. The role of the school psychologist in the multidisciplinary care of pupils diagnosed with spina bifida and hydrocephalus is to emphasize the holistic personality development aspect of the pupil and to co-create a supportive social environment. If you are a school psychologist or other member of the school support team and have a pupil with spina bifida and hydrocephalus in your care, we offer you a basic overview of the topics you should focus on.
First, to get a basic idea how spina bifida and hydrocephalus affect a person's everyday life, we recommend you to read the relevant chapter in the Multi-in Manual for Psychologists. For more detailed information, please refer to the Multi-in General Guidelines or the Multi-in Manuals for Nurses.
Second, Pay attention to the performance profile of the pupil's cognitive and executive functions, the development of which may be affected by the changes in the brain due to hydrocephalus. If necessary, implement or initiate a high-quality psychological assessment of these abilities. This is essential for proper understanding of the pupil's performance in acquiring knowledge, but above all for understanding their behavior.
Pupils with executive function disorder are often perceived by adults as disorganized or lazy. This has a big impact on their self-esteem and self-image. What we, as professionals working with such pupils, can do is, first of all, to build up a personal relationship with them and provide them with appropriate form of support. Such a pupil may need to learn how to approach more complex tasks, how to break them down into smaller steps, and at the same time, perhaps as trivial as that, how to get things in order.
Third, in your work, place an emphasis on preventing the risks of secondary aggravation of the consequences of disability. Let us now look at the most common situations that contribute to the aggravation of disability. In the school environment, it is customary to view a pupil with a disability primarily as having a deficit, not as having potential.
Differences in cognitive processes and executive functions in a pupil with spina bifida or hydrocephalus are often overlooked, ignored, or denied. Or vice versa, they are overestimated and considered as an immutable, insurmountable barrier for the pupil. They are sometimes misinterpreted as impairments in intellectual function or lower pupil motivation.
Another risk is when the child's natural developmental needs are not given importance.
In our practice, we often encounter that children with disabilities, and therefore also children with spina bifida and hydrocephalus, are included in the kindergarten team much later than their normal peers. This does not take into account the child's developmental need to expand the child's social circle beyond the family at the age of 3 or 4. In preschool and younger school age, it is need for play, the development of peer relationships, and the need for ordinary childhood experience. Children are often excluded from school events because of physical barriers in the environment or because of frequent visits to doctors, hospitals, or other professionals. As a result, he or she has fewer natural opportunities for informal encounters, which ultimately prevents him or her from developing social skills. At older school age, the need for a pupil with a disability to participate in decisions and have a say in things that affect them is overlooked. Every young person needs to have a vision of an open future with opportunities on offer for him. Adults around a pupil with a disability often have a distorted view of the kind of a life these people lead in the adulthood. Conversation about the ambitions of a young person with a disability, job opportunities, or the possibility of starting a family are therefore often avoided.
One of the greatest risks for a student with spina bifida or hydrocephalus is in a hyperprotective, that is, overprotective environment. And not just of the parents, but also teachers or assistants around the child with a disability. This approach puts the child in the position of a victim who needs to be cared for, and so the child does not have the opportunity to develop the competencies and skills needed to overcome obstacles. It is desirable every child, and especially those with disabilities, to expose them to obstacles that they are capable of handling. It is important to accompany them in overcoming the obstacles and finding their own solutions. This leads both to the development of the necessary skills, but also contributes significantly to building self-esteem, awareness of one's own competence, resilience, and autonomy.
A specific risk for vulnerable children is the risk of social exclusion, which can lead to bullying. It is very important that all school staff are aware that how they behave towards a pupil with a disability makes a big difference how other pupils will treat a pupil with a disability. It is the role of the school psychologist in collaboration with the special teacher to work to ensure that all staff are aware of this impact.
Bullying as such is often the result of more complex difficulties of individual pupils and supported by certain dynamics of classroom relationships. Therefore, we consider the most effective approach to be preventive action concerned for the social climate in the classroom and individual work with pupils who show signs of risky behavior. The prevention of social exclusion in the context of the rights of pupils with disabilities is as important as any other support in the educational process. We consider it essential that the school psychologist, in collaboration with other members of the multidisciplinary team, is able to recognize all the named secondary risks of aggravation disability and, together with all those involved, take steps to correct them. In the Multi-In Manual for School Psychologists, you will find practical tips and recommendations for working with teaching and other professional staff and school management.
Also specific recommendations for cooperation with parents, for individual work with the pupil, as well as recommendation for working with the classroom team aimed at preventing the secondary aggravation of disability.
There you will find links for further resources and methodologies that will help you not only when working with a pupil with a disability, but in supporting all pupils.
We also covered the topic of building resilience and other topics that didn't fit in this video. We also recommend reading and downloading the Multi-In Manual for Special Teachers, which introduce other important topics and complements the Multi-In Manuals for Psychologists in many ways.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of children, pupils, and young people with spina bifida and hydrocephalus, thank you for your interest in this issue.
We believe that together we can contribute to strengthening the protection of the rights of pupils with disabilities, to discovering their potential, strengthen their personality, and thus improve their quality of life now and in the future. Thank you!